welcome to everyone to our fiscal year 24 Safe Clean Water Mini Grants and Refill Station Grants Informational Workshop. We really appreciate that you're taking time out of your day to join us and to hear more about our smaller grant opportunities that are available year-round. My name is Kristen Yasukawa, and I'm the Community Benefits Program Administrator. So I oversee our Safe Clean Water Grants and Partnerships Program. There are funding opportunities for the community. So we are excited to talk about these two grant opportunities today. We're going to cover a lot. So we'll be going into the agenda and we'll be covering the two opportunities, and we'll give tips along the way to help you determine which opportunity might be the best fit for you and how to develop a strong application. But first, before we jump in, I would love for our grants team to introduce themselves. So I'm just going to pass it over. We can start with Renee and then popcorn it to the rest of our panel.
Thank you, Kristen. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rene Moreno. I serve as a management analyst too, supporting our grants and partnership program as well as our public art program. I'll hand it over to Michael.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Lee. I am the Senior Management Analyst with our grants team, and I oversee our standard grants projects. And I will pass it over to Robert.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Robert. I'm the grant staff analyst for the Grants and Partnerships program, and I will be leading the Refill Station grant program, which we will be talking about today. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Diana P.
Hi everyone, my name is Diana, and I am assisting in the Grants and Partnership program as an intern, and I'll pass it over to Diana R.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Diana Ramirez. I'm a management analyst too, also with the group, and I'll be assisting with mini grants and other items. I'll pass it over to who's left. I can't see. Robert, did you introduce yourself already? Okay.
Yeah, I think we can pass it back to Kristen.
All right, great. We're excited for everyone to meet our full grants and partnerships team. We do have specific areas that we each focus on, but we do a lot of cross-training and support to ensure that all of our grantees have a high level of customer service. So that's why you'll see us all here today. We can go to the next slide and get started. Okay. So we do have a very simple agenda today, but there are quite a few slides and a lot of good information that we're going to be sharing. So, feel free to take notes, but also note that our presentation slides and a recording of today's workshop will also be posted on the website if you ever want to refer back or to share with anyone else who wasn't able to join us. And then this is a great time for anyone to ask any questions. So we do appreciate, a conversational style as well. And we want to make sure that you walk away with all of your questions answered from today's workshop. So please feel free to ask any questions using the raise hand feature, and we can unmute you. Or if you want to do it via writing, you can use that Q&A box feature down below on the menu bar. And then, again, all of our materials, our PowerPoint and the video will be posted on our grants website after the workshop today. And that link is put in the chat. Thanks, Renee. Okay, we can just jump right in to the next slide. Great. Well, I see a lot of very familiar names in our participant list, so welcome back for our returning grantees. But if you're new and unfamiliar with us, we are part of the Santa Clara Valley Water Districts, and we're also known as Valley Water. So we're a public agency that's a special district of the state of California. We are separate from the county in our own special district. And most people know us as the drinking water wholesale provider for Santa Clara County. But we also have two other areas of our mission, which is to manage our region's waterways and flood protection activities, and then to create healthy creeks and ecosystems. So we do have a pretty broad mission. Anything that water touches, we're somehow involved. And our mission, as you can see on the screen, is to provide Silicon Valley with safe, clean water for a healthy life, environment, and economy. So just keeping that in mind and starting there, all of our grant funding opportunities and eligibility for projects are based on the areas of our mission. So the clean, reliable drinking water, flood protection, and healthy creeks and ecosystems. So you will see that mentioned throughout. All right, next slide. Okay, so you may be wondering, why does a water and flood protection and environmental stewardship special district have a grants program? So we're very fortunate that the voters of Santa Clara County approved a ballot measure in 2020 called the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program. And that parcel tax ballot measure allocates specific funding to be designated for grants and partnerships for community-led projects. And the intent there is for us to leverage community resources with our grants and partnerships funds to have an efficient use of funds and increase our collaboration and partnerships with the community, with different cities, schools, nonprofit organizations, and other community groups, because we know that we can't do this alone. And that we always do better when we work together as a community. And the more people that are involved in conserving water and taking care of our environment, all of that will help us really move the needle in our area. So that's where our origin of our funding. And we can go to the next slide. All right, so under that approved parcel tax program, there are 6 priorities, and all of these priorities tie back to one aspect of the mission of Valley Water. We previously had 5 priorities under the 2012 measure, so some of you may remember that. In the 2020 renewal, we did create a new priority F, and that is where all of our grants and partnerships have been consolidated into priority F as one pot of funds that we can manage. And so that's where you may see priority F9 or F9 mentioned throughout our materials, and that's really what we're referring to. Okay, next slide, please. So within F9, which is our grants and partnerships, there are 4 key performance indicators that those are like our commitments to the voters of how we're going to use those funds. And those equate to the 4 different funding opportunities that we have available. So we have our standard grants, our mini grants, our bottle refill station grants, and our partnerships. And today specifically, we're going to be talking about the mini grants and the refill stations. So our mini grants program are smaller grants of up to $5,000 per project. They are available year round, and we'll talk more about the details of that today, but they're really intended to give smaller projects a chance for seed funding to try out a new idea and then maybe get data that and lessons learned that could scale up to be a larger standard grant or another partnership. This is open to a wide breadth of different organizations and applicants. And then the water bottle refill stations are a flat $5,000 specifically for the purchase and installation of a water bottle filling station. And that's also available year round. And as we mentioned, that's everything we're going to talk about today in detail. But if you want to look at more information on the side as we're talking, we do have our grants website, which I think was already added to the chat. And then if at any time you have a question and want to contact us directly, you can do it here during the webinar, or we have our grants email, which is grants@valleywater.org. So feel free to contact us there as well. All right, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just a quick glance at our grant opportunities, just so you can see what the differences are and help to see where your project idea might fit. So as we mentioned, we do have that standard grant opportunity, and those are for much larger grants. There's usually no minimum or maximum, but we have a lot more money available each year. The agreement term is for 5 years, and then the payment is reimbursement based. But this is a competitive grant opportunity, so we have a set cycle and a set time frame when we accept the applications. So if you are interested in that, keep an eye out for the end of this year or early next year when we plan to open the next standard grant cycle. But like I mentioned, we will be focusing today on the mini grants and the refill station grants. So for both of these grant opportunities, it's $5,000 per project. For mini grants, it's up to $5,000. So if you have less than that, that's fine. But we actually encourage our applicants to just go for the full $5,000. And then we have $100,000 available each year. Those are separate $100,000 dollars available for the mini grants and for the refill station grants. And we usually just award the funds on a rolling basis. So as applications are received, we will review and award until there's no more funding left. I will say that we've never actually run out of funding in a fiscal year, so we are able to just keep on taking in applications year round. So the agreement term for mini grants is 2 years. So that means whatever project you're proposing has to be completed within 2 years. And same with the refill station grants, it's a 1-year agreement term. So you do need to install your refill station within 1 year. And then the payment for both the mini grant and the refill station grant is the same. So as soon as you get awarded and then we have an executed agreement, then you will get 50% of your funds up front immediately. And then the remainder will be after you show us that you completed the project. So there's no supporting documentation aside from things related to showing your project was completed, but we don't ask for receipts or timesheets or anything like that, like we do for the standard grants. So these are kind of like our little gateway grant opportunities. All right, so we can head to the next slide and I'll hand it over to Robert.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristen. All right, so just diving right into it, we're going to go ahead and discuss some overlapping eligibility criteria for the mini grant program and refill station grant program. So as you see on the screen here, you can see the different type of partners or community organizations that are eligible to apply. So we typically accept applications from these following organization types and groups that work and provide services within Santa Clara County. So these include public agencies or municipalities, such as cities, towns, county agencies, special districts, nonprofit organizations with a 501c3 tax exempt status, or a nonprofit without a 501c3 status, but are able to demonstrate that they are an affiliate of a nonprofit organization that has that tax exempt status. Schools, community colleges, universities, public, private, or nonprofit, open space districts, mutual water agencies, resource conservation districts, for-profit organizations, or an organized community group with an established structure. If you're not sure which organization type you fall under, you could always feel free to reach out to us, and we would be more than happy to, learn more about your organization and help you figure out which is the best organization type to register under.
Before we move forward, we have a question. Sorry, Robert.
Do
you want me to wait until you're done?
You could go ahead and ask the question.
So the question reads as follows. Are we limited to the amount of refill stations we can apply for? The city of Santa Clara County is interested in installing about 3 stations throughout the community.
So I could take that, and Kristen, feel free to add on if I missed anything. So the question, are we limited to the amount of refill stations we could apply for? The city of Santa Clara is interested in installing about 3 stations throughout the community. So as of now, we don't necessarily have a limit as to how many applications you could submit from the same organization. However, we do encourage a diversity of applicants as well as a diversity of project locations. And we tend to prioritize places that serve disadvantaged communities or school-age children and students, or places that don't currently have a refill station. So in this case, the city of Santa Clara is interested in installing 3 stations throughout the community. I'd say that's fine. You may go ahead and submit an application for each project location, just as long as, they're like different projects, different locations. And then from there, we can, kind of prioritize which ones fall within the boundaries of disadvantaged community or what serves school-age children. But yes, to answer your question, you may apply for more than 1 station, but you'd have to submit a separate application for each project location. That makes sense. Oh, is there any other question?
No other questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and then quick side note, if you do fall within a for-profit or private organization or like a private agency, you must be able to demonstrate public access to your project. And what that basically means is that, are people able to like access the project? So like a refill station, if you're a for-profit or private agency, you must be able to like specify, whatever business hours is open to the public. Is it free to use, things like that. Next slide. Okay. Cool. So application requirements. So to view the applications for both of these programs, we have a dedicated grants portal called Flex. You could find the portal link in the chat box, which will be added right now. Or you could also visit valleywater.flex.io, which as you can see on the screen. So this online grants portal serves as a central hub for all of your grant applications and related documentation. So this is where you could view the questions, upload all related documentation, and this is where you submit it to. We'd like to emphasize that we only accept applications through our grants portal, so we're no longer accepting any hard copy or emailed applications. You could actually get started today by registering yourself and your organization on Flex. You would just need to create an account with Flex in order to view and access our portal and applications. And if you have any questions or encounter any difficulties during the application process, please feel free to reach out to our team. You could send us an email to grants@valleywater.org, and we will gladly assist you. We also have a pre-recorded demonstration video on our website on how to navigate Flex for those who may be unfamiliar. And Renee added that link to the chat. And yeah, next slide.
We do have another question, Robert.
Okay, cool.
So regarding the organizational eligibility, does a school district apply to that eligibility, and how many schools can have a refill station installed?
Yeah, so great question. Definitely school districts are eligible applicants for the refill station program as well as our mini grant program. We actually do encourage and would love to work with schools. That's one of our target audience, community partners. Second question, how many schools can we have refill stations? So like I said earlier, we don't necessarily have a limit as to how many schools, or in this case project locations, you could install a refill station. But we do, again, if we do receive like an influx of applications, that's when we kind of have to take a step back and kind of prioritize, okay, which of these locations serve disadvantaged communities, which of these locations fall within a poverty zone, right? So we have different resources on our website as well to kind of check that, and or we could also check that ourselves. But to answer your question, yes, school districts could apply. You could apply to as many refill stations as you want, as long as they're at different schools. And you would need to submit a separate application for each school. So as an example, we did have a school district in this recent grant cycle that applied for a refill station for, I believe, five or six different schools. Don't remember at the top of my head, but they had to submit an application on Flux for each separate school. And then, with each separate application, we go through the review process. But you'll find that most of the documents could, satisfy the requirements for each application. So in that case, it makes it kind of easy too.
Thank you. We have one other question regarding Flux. So if the organization has already been funded and has a Flux profile, can the organization add another user if that user is in a different department and is applying for a grant opportunity?
Yeah, I could take this one too. And feel free to add on if I miss anything. So yeah, definitely we could add different users to the same Flex profile. Just a note about that, two people would not be able to access the same application at once, I believe. So, if one person is in Flex and currently editing, let's say, a refill station application, another person won't be able to log on and go in there at the same time. So you would have to save and exit for the other person to come in and see it. So one organization could definitely have different applications in their queue, like as drafts. So you could definitely have more than one person logged in and work on let's say a different application. We could do that for you. We could add another user if you want us to, and kind of walk you through. That other user would just have their own login credentials. And then, on the title, we could specify which department they're with and things like that.
Thank you.
All right. Are you ready to move on to the next slide?
We have one more question before we move along.
Yeah.
So a point of clarification. The question reads, so I thought I heard that it's one refill station per school, or was that incorrect? Our school has one, but such a large campus, I wanted to apply for another station for the other side of the campus. Would this not be acceptable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah, sorry, let me go ahead and clarify. So it is, we are looking to award one refill station grant to each school. So if your school already has a refill station that was obtained from your own funds or a different program or different source, not from Valley Water, you are eligible to apply to our program, but that same school wouldn't necessarily be eligible to apply for another station from this program. If that makes sense. So if your school already has an existing one from a different source, you could apply for a Valley Water Refill Station grant. But I think the part where we kind of have to reassess the needs and again prioritize is when if your school is applying to two different refill stations for one school, that's kind of, we want to diversify and spread out the funds to different schools that may not have a refill station. So I hope that clears it up. I tried my best to clarify. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Cool. I think we're ready to move on to this slide. All right. So thank you guys for the questions, by the way. These are really good questions, and happy to see that people are very curious, and feel free to continue asking questions. We love to hear from you. Great. So moving on to application requirements. So on the screen, you'll see that for the mini grant program and the Refill Station grant program, they do overlap a lot with the requirements to submit an application. So I'll just go through it line by line. First thing we would need to see with your application is a signed IRS W-9 tax form. So this form provides us with your tax identification number, and it verifies your organization status. Second, we also need a delegation of authority letter or any type of documentation. This document serves as confirmation that the individual who is signing the application on behalf of your organization has the authority to do so. We may also need additional documentation that establishes that the person named in that letter has authority to delegate those grant permissions and fulfill the responsibilities of the grant. So, this additional verification may look like a board resolution, meeting minutes from your governing entity, or some type of existing organizational policy. And the reason why we request these type of verifications is just that so we could ensure that there's a clear paper trail of authority to whoever has the delegation to apply and carry out the grant. So we do have a guidance document that kind of talks a little bit more about delegation of authority, documentation in detail. And it is posted on our website under resources. So feel free to check that out if you're stuck on that, or you could always also email us, and we'd be happy to go over it with you. Additionally, we also request site permissions from the property owner. So this permission letter demonstrates that your organization has authorization to implement the proposed project on the specified site. So this document can look like a permit or even a written permission letter from the property owner, which we will dive a little bit deeper on in the next slide. But for the mini grant programs, there are 2 additional items that we ask the grantee to fulfill, or the applicant, sorry. So the applicant must demonstrate a 25% match of the total project costs, and they must submit a timeline and list of tasks outlining how they plan to complete the project within 2 years. Again, if you have any questions about these requirements or need assistance in obtaining them, our team is here to assist you. We'd be more than happy to set up a call, whatever works. We do have some examples and templates available depending on the type of document required. Next slide. All right, so diving a little bit deeper into the site permissions. So before starting any project or project activities on private, public, or Valley Water owned property, it is important to have the necessary permits in place. So this ensures compliance with regulatory requirements and helps maintain a smooth project execution. If you have any questions or need information regarding permitting, our grant staff is here to help you and guide you through that process and provide necessary assistance and connect you with those who may offer permit requirements. Some common examples of site permissions could include lease agreements, property owner consent letters, permits from relevant authorities, and any other documentation that demonstrates the authorization to conduct activities at the project site. Next slide, please.
Robert, we have a question for the site permission slide, which the question reads, would the site permissions from the property owner be required in the proposal or presented after the award?
Yeah, so I actually want to hand it off to Kristen just to confirm and clarify that one.
Yeah, I would, thanks. That's a really good question. So for the refill station grants, we do need that to process your application and move it forward because that's a much more streamlined process. So by the time you get awarded, we'll just move right into the agreement. So it's just great to have everything in place. Otherwise, that can hold things up when it comes time to your agreement. For mini grants, it is kind of dependent on the type of project that you have. Sometimes our mini grantees, they may have a specific site in mind, or they could be proposing, I'm going to do 3 cleanups throughout the county. Um, and then maybe they're going to choose the locations later. So if that's the case, then yes, we would just request the site permissions before the project activities take place. But if they do know the location in advance, we do try to see at least get a status of like, hey, if they're going to work on a school, they have permission to do so, or they're already engaging in conversations about that and have identified who the appropriate people are for to get the permissions from. So I hope that helps. For mini grants, it's a lot more dependent on what type of activity you have. And refill stations is definitely when you're applying.
We do have a follow-up question. What kind of agreement does a school district school need?
And yeah, in the context of site permissions, so first you'll need to identify, does your school district own or lease the property? Because it's whoever owns the property needs to give the permission. A lot of school districts we've worked with do own the property of the school. And so in that case, then we would just need to see the documentation of the governing body of the school district, which is usually like the board, school board. They usually have a standard, maybe resolution that delegates to the superintendent all authorization to make decisions of the property and enter into agreements and contracts. And so then that superintendent would have the delegated authority and could write a letter of permission for the refill station to be installed at the school. So that's just one example, but we're happy to, also take a look at your structure of your organization to see what might already be in place and what could work in existing documentation, or we do have some samples as well if you don't have anything in place and are looking to put something in place. So I hope that makes sense, but that's a common situation for the school districts.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristen. Are you ready to move on to the next slide? Is there any more questions? Awesome. Great. So moving on to funding. So for both the mini grant program and refill station grant program, as mentioned earlier, so for the mini grant program, sorry, it's up to $5,000 per grant award, but for the refill station grant program, we award out the full $5,000. And so for each program, we do have an available funding pot of $100,000 each. And like I said earlier, for the refill station grant program, priority will be given to those organizations that serve or are located in disadvantaged communities and or cater to students or school-age children. Each program, we encourage you to take advantage of these opportunities as awards and funding are given on a first come, first served basis or until all funds have been dispersed. So regarding funding distribution, as Kristen mentioned earlier, 50% of the awarded amount are provided upfront once an agreement has been signed by both parties, Valley Water and your organization, and the remaining funds are released upon project completion, along with the required closeout documents to ensure that all the deliverables were met. Next slide. And I'll actually pass it over to Michael, who will be talking more about our environmental compliance reviews.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it. All right, so we'll move on to the environmental compliance that is required for mini grants and refill station grants. So in terms of environmental compliance for Valley Water, Valley Water must comply with the California Environmental Quality Act, aka CEQA. So as a public agency, we are required to have a CEQA review for all of our grant projects. And this CEQA requires that Valley Water analyzes a project's potential for environmental impact. So the way we process it over at Valley Water is our internal environmental planning unit that we have here handles this type of review. And so they'll get your applications from the grants team, and then they'll do the environmental impact review and then determine what type of CEQA document they're going to prepare. So again, this is something that applicants do not have to have completed prior to submitting their application. And the environmental planning unit will take care of that. And CEQA is complete once the environmental planning unit provides signed documentation of compliance. However, as part of our process at Valley Water, we may have additional inquiries or requests for the applicant to ensure compliance with CEQA requirements. So again, please be reminded that only a CEQA planner can determine the CEQA review required. And this is something that's not taken care of by grant staff, but our environmental planning unit. So I know it's a bit dense. CEQA is kind of one of those areas where people aren't really familiar with. So just keep in mind that our Valley Water environmental planning staff will handle this. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I just wanted to add for refill stations, our refill station applicants and grantees really typically don't need to worry about this. It's something that's part of an internal process that our grants team will work on using information that you provide in your application. So some of those follow-up questions that we may have on the application, it could be related to getting the information we need to have our environmental team move forward with this process. For mini grants, it really depends on the type of activity that you're proposing, how much involvement that the applicant or the grantee will have in this piece of the process. I would say a majority probably don't need to be super involved, but if it's a mini grant that's related to habitat restoration, or a lot of times if it's moving dirt, then we may have to have some more conversations about that. So we'll be able to flag that and determine that, but just wanted to put that out there of the differences as well for mini grants and refill stations.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. If there are no questions, I will hand it off back to Robert.
We do have a question about funding. So how much of the 100,000 for refill station is still available?
So I could take this one. So we have the full 100,000 available this year. So we go based off our fiscal year. So our fiscal year started July 1st and runs till June 30th of the next year. So as of now, we haven't awarded any refill stations. So we have the full 100,000 available right now.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to insurance coverage. So we do require that each project must be insured for the entire term of the agreement. So all insurance endorsements must receive approval before we finalize the agreement. So this ensures that the necessary coverage is in place and provides the protection for both parties involved. So grantees are expected to comply with the insurance requirements and maintain coverage for the following insurance policies that you see here, which is a general liability, auto liability, and workers' compensation, as applicable to the project. So we understand that there might be different projects that might not necessarily require a few of the policies or might need some modification, and so we'll gladly work with you to meet those insurance needs and adjust or waive any insurance requirements as needed on a case-by-case basis. However, specifically for refill stations, since all of them, are pretty much the same type of project, all refill station projects are eligible for an insurance waiver. And so this is something that grant staff will work internally with our risk management team to submit a waiver on behalf of the grantee. So this means that, if you are awarded a refill station grant, you don't need to worry about obtaining insurance for the project or the duration of the project. Next slide.
We do have a question regarding the refill station. Would there be a list of suppliers for refill stations to help meet any necessary requirements?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So we don't necessarily have a list of specific suppliers or contractors, if that's also what you're looking for. But we do have a helpful resource on our refill station website, which we could link in the chat. It's a PDF file of different types of refill stations, and has links to the brand and information about the model, the price tag of it, and some of the features. So that's kind of there to just aid you if you're not sure what type of refill station would fit best with your facility. But again, it's just recommendations. You could pick any refill station that best fits your needs, and they come from different brands as well. But one thing to point out, and which we'll also be discussing later, is that you would need to provide or find your own licensed contractor in the state of California to install the refill station. But yes, that's a good question. We could put the link to the refill station website in the chat, just so folks could have that ready too if they want to check that out. All right. That being said, I'll pass it off to Kristen for some important reminders before moving forward.
All right. So thank you, Robert. This is just some 3 really important things that we like to emphasize. We've covered all these things, but would like to just reemphasize them at this time. So the first is that we really would like to, a need to ensure that there's public access and public benefit to Santa Clara County residents with the projects that are being proposed. So, and the refill stations. So since, as we mentioned earlier, it's taxpayer dollars that fund our mini grants and our refill station grants, it's important that these projects are open to the public. And by that, we mean that the project should either be free of charge to any member of the public, or that the grantee organization has a process in place for members of the public to request to waive any of the associated fees related to, like an entry or registration fee or something like that. And so this will ensure that all Santa Clara County residents have access and can benefit from the project. The second item is more of a logistical thing, but if you're awarded your mini grant or your refill station grant, there is another step, and that is to create an actual legal agreement that needs to be signed by your grantee organization as well as by Valley Water. So until that agreement is signed, we request that you do not begin any work on the project activities because we are not able to apply any of the funds toward expenditures that were made prior to the agreement effective date. We can only put our funds toward the activities that are outlined within the agreement and then that were spent during the agreement term. So there are some special circumstances for mini grants, which we can talk about on a case-by-case basis, where there is an option to discuss a retroactive start date. So that means it's a start date that is not the agreement execution date. It could be a time before that. But if that is an option for your project and your activities, then that would be a discussion that we would all have together. And then the last point is emphasizing the role of our grant staff. So our grants team, everyone you see on the panel today, will be your main point of contact for your application and then throughout the life of your grant project. So part of our role is to provide, excellent customer service to our grantees, but also be your advocates inside of our big Valley Water organization. So by being your main point of contact, we can ensure that you're connected with, the permitting team or the environmental team or anyone else, any other subject matter experts within Valley Water. We can help advocate for your project and have do that coordination. And we will also be your coordination for any correspondence and requests made of our board of directors. So if you're holding, for example, a ribbon cutting or a big event where you're going to have different speakers making opening remarks and you'd like to invite one of our board of directors to attend, we can assist you with going through our process and making that request to the board members. So those are just some things to keep in mind. We are here to help. All right. So we can go to the next slide. Okay. So this is a timeline graphic to give you an idea of what our goals are to move the mini grants forward and how long you can expect things to take. So this timeline is also on the mini grants website as well. And so you can look at it on your own time. We will also, I think, be able to add the link to the mini grant website in the chat for easy access. But, the first step is registering for Flux and then submitting your application. And once you submit that application, our grant staff will review it. We'll be looking for that it meets the different criteria, that the application is completely filled out, all of the required documents are uploaded, and we may just have some clarifying questions or have some, follow-up questions, like if we need more information that might be related to the environmental review. And so there might be some back and forth during this time. And then once the grant staff has all the information that we need to move it forward, we will move it to the different reviewers. The Chief of External Affairs here at Valley Water is the final approver. So once she approves of the application, the applicant will be automatically notified that you are awarded the funds. So at that time, you turn from an applicant into an official grantee. And at that time, our team will be reaching out to you, and that's when we'll be talking about executing the agreement. And so we have a lot of agreement templates. We'll use what you submitted in the application and start fleshing out your agreement. But at that time, there might be some back and forth to finalize the agreement. And there are some internal reviews that we have with our risk manager, our environmental planners, and our legal team as well. And then once the agreement is approved, and that means it's been signed, and we use DocuSign, so we try to streamline it as much as possible, then we will we can do the initial invoice, which is the 50% of the funds up front. And then then you go do your project, you complete your project, and then come back to us, and then we'll be able to give you the final 50% of the funds. So of everything in this timeline, everything is happening within the Flux grants management system, except for the agreement execution. That will be a Word document that's outside of Flux that will be done via email and then through DocuSign for the final signatures. And then we upload that back into Flux, and we'll use Flux for the invoicing and closeout. All right. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I know we talked about a lot of the logistics and the eligibility and the criteria. So for the mini grants program, it's really pretty open in what types of projects are eligible. So it's, in a nutshell, any type of project that furthers or is related to the Valley Water mission. So types of projects could be enhancing creek and bay ecosystems, improving fish passage and habitat, so that's related to healthy creeks and ecosystems, or identifying potential water reduction technologies and methods, and furthering water conservation, also preventing trash and contaminants from entering our waterways and groundwater, expanding access to trails and open space, increasing the community awareness and understanding of any of those activities or anything about the Valley Water Mission, and then also conducting any educational or outreach opportunities related to any of those benefits as well. Okay, so we're going to show some sample projects just to give you an idea, and I'm going to hand it over to Michael for the next couple slides.
Great, thank you, Kristen. So this is an example of one of our mini grant projects that we awarded. So project name is Hellier County Park Mural Project, and they were awarded the full $5,000 in 2021. And it was under the grant type D3 Restore Wildlife Habitat. So as part of this mini grant, the grantee designed and installed a mural that features nature scenes reflecting a healthy creek to educate people about the valuable natural resources of their local waterways. And the site was chosen specifically because it was prone to graffiti, and it was also the site of the grantee's quarterly BioBlitz events, where participants explore the various species of plants and animals along Coyote Creek. So we also have a quick video that we'd like to present of the mini grant. All right, and then we can move to the next slide. So another example of our mini grants. This one is for the Friends of Master Gardeners of Santa Clara. And this is their Drink What You Grow Teaching and Demonstration Garden Foundation project. So Valley Water provided funding for installing planters, irrigation, and plants to create a teaching garden space at Marshall Cottle Park in San Jose. The grantee also conducted virtual and hands-on education outreach activities to teach gardeners how to grow plants in small areas while reducing waste and conserving water. So overall, the project allowed the community to really learn about sustainable gardening. And again, this was a full award of a $5,000 fee grant. So we have a quick video for that one. And so those are just a couple examples of some of the awesome mini grants that we have helped award funds to. So with that, I will pass it over to Robert.
Before we get into the Refill Station Grant Program, we do have a question about mini grants. Can you confirm if an organization can submit 2 separate mini grant applications for 2 different projects in the same fiscal year?
Yes, that is possible. You can submit as many applications as you'd like, as long as they are actually separate projects. And we do just have one requirement that we can't award more than one grant to the same project.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so moving on to the Refill Station Grant Program. We'll be talking about this a little bit more in depth. So we did talk a lot about the similarities with the mini grant program. And so you'll notice that these 2 programs are very, very similarly structured. So just diving into the Refill Station Grant Program, our whole commitment for this program is to increase drinking water access in our communities with priority in project locations that work with underserved communities or locations serving school-age children and students in Santa Clara County. And as a reminder that the information that will be presented can be found on our website, which is listed on this slide, bottom right corner, and was also placed in the chat box. Next slide, please. All right, so just diving into a little bit more about the project eligibility and requirements. So the location of the proposed refill station must be located in Santa Clara County and must be installed in a location with public access. As mentioned, prioritization will go towards organizations that work in historically underserved communities or locations serving school-age children. Sorry, that's a typo there. And some of the requirements that we typically ask to submit along with your application are listed right here, which we also discussed earlier. One of it being the property owner consent letter or any other type of document that authorizes permission for the installation of the water bottle refill station. Your organization signed W-9 form. We also require a picture of the proposed location. So you could literally just like snap a photo of like the wall of where you are trying to install your refill station at, or take a picture of like an old refill station that you're looking to replace with the grant, along with a simple floor plan of your facility. So like a map of the facility and just indicating where in that map that location is. And lastly, that delegation of authority documentation that we mentioned earlier as well. Right, next slide, please. All right, and we do have some refill station specific important notes just for you to be aware of. So like I mentioned earlier, the grantee is responsible for seeking out a licensed contractor in the state of California to properly install the refill station. It's mentioned in the agreement as well. So we just want to make sure, all laws and requirements regarding the refill station is being followed through. The grantee is also responsible for the ongoing maintenance and repairs beyond the agreement term. So the agreement for refill station projects lasts 1 year. So our funds typically, cover the purchase, installation, and maybe a little bit of the maintenance, depending on what kind of station you choose. But beyond those funds and beyond the agreement term, the grantee is responsible for maintaining that. So the maintenance will look differently based on the refill station, but that could be like replacing the filters or things like that. So grantee has 1 year from the date of agreement execution to install a refill station, submit the required documentation, which I'll be talking about in a bit too, what the required documentation will look like. Well, basically it's a photo of the installed refill station, as well as the Valley Water logo and signage that we will deliver to you So towards the end of your project, if once you're in the installation period of your refill station, we ask that you notify us when you're reaching that point or when you have already installed the station, just so we could have enough time to deliver our pre-designed logo and signage for you to install with your station. And then the closeout document that we need from you after that is just a photo of that station with our logo. You submit it to us, and then we process it, and we process out the final payment or the remainder of the funds to you. And that's basically all you need to close out your project. And we may conduct additional things just to maybe like a site visit. We probably ask you to feature you in our social media and things like that. But for most of the administrative stuff, it's just that photo. Next slide, please.
We do have a question, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any restrictions around using an organization's own building and maintenance staff for the installation of a refill station?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Using your own building and maintenance staff for installation of the refill station. So I'd say that's, as long as they're licensed and they have all the necessary certifications, and that's what is within their scope of work to do, and that's what they're already tasked with, I'd say that's fine. We don't necessarily require like you to submit any type of information regarding who's installing those refill stations. We would have schools use their own maintenance and operations team to install a refill station themselves on school property. So that's totally fine to use, your own staff. You don't necessarily have to seek an external contractor. That makes sense. Awesome. All right, great question. All right, so just diving into the timeline, just to give you an idea of what you could expect from when you submit your application to when an agreement is executed. So step one, application, you apply for our grant through our Flex grants management system, and you submit the required documentation, which we had went over, which moves you to the second phase. After you've hit submit, we get notified of your application being submitted through Flex, and we review it internally. And so during this time, it may take 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how much back and forth we may have or how much information we might need from you. So during this time, you could expect our grant staff to reach out to you and either set up a meeting to discuss some of the feedback that we have, or just some clarifying questions just to help with our compliance checks as well, or just retrieving the required documentation as well. So that usually takes 2 to 4 weeks. Again, that's rough estimate depending on how fast we could get the required documents. And once we receive everything, once the application is complete, once we've gotten our approvals, we move on to our execution stage, and that is where we draft the agreement. We work with the grantee to look over the agreement, finalize it if everything looks good. We have them sign off on it through DocuSign, and then we route it internally for our own internal signatures. So once Valley Water has signed off on the agreement, we'll send you a copy of the agreement, update your Flex, and that is when we process the first invoice, which is a 50% of the funds, or $2,500, which we will then send over to you. And then from there, from the agreement execution date, or the date that Valley Water signed the agreement, the grantee has 1 year to complete the project. And lastly, it brings us to installation and closeout stage, which I mentioned. Once you install your refill station, once you're approaching your installation date, feel free to let us know, and we could send you over our Valley Water signage and logo. And so once you install those logos, take a photo of it with your refill station, we will be able to review that and then send over the remaining of the funds. Next slide, please. All right, great. So here we have an example of actually a school that we recently worked with. It's actually one of our first grantees for our refill station program. So we worked with a student from Milpitas Unified School District who happens to also be a Valley Water Youth Commissioner. She kind of took lead on the program, but she also worked with her school principal, and we also had some additional support from the school district in obtaining some of those required documents that we mentioned earlier, such as the property owner consent letter and the authorized signatory documentation. So as you see here, we awarded out the full $5,000. They were able to purchase and install a water bottle refill station in Milpitas High School. And so that station has been providing access to safe, clean drinking water for over 3,000 high school students and encourages the use of reusable water bottles. And since installation in February of this year, more than 2,000 plastic water bottles have been saved so far. So it's really, really great to see that the impact, is there and it is being put to good use. Next slide, please. All right, and then just diving into, how did they do it? And you probably notice that it might be similar to different other school organizations. So typically we would identify and confirm that the primary signatory, who that individual is, and usually from what we've noticed, it usually comes from the school district level. So it could be like a superintendent or assistant superintendent. We just need to identify and confirm who that is, and we also need to verify that through a documentation, and that could come from an existing board resolution or a organizational policy that kind of shows that delegation of authority. And then from there, the applicant was able to submit the photo of the proposed site at their high school, the floor plan of their school, and then the signed W-9 form. And then to close out the project and to receive the rest of the funds, they just installed the station with the Valley Water signage that we provided and delivered to their school. All right, next slide, please.
Hey, Robert, I just want to add one more thing about that. So a lot of times what we've seen, especially with the schools and a lot of our grantee organizations, is there may be somebody who's the project manager who's doing the activities day to day, who's doing the grant application and submitting everything. That person doesn't need to have the delegation of authority given to them. The person we need to see the paper trail of the delegation of authority for is whoever is going to be signing the agreement and whoever is going to be signing for the invoices. So there could be somebody else, a staff person, a project manager, or in this case, it was a youth commissioner, a student who was doing all the other work. But that's the beauty of our Flex system, is that we can have multiple users in there and assign them the different roles so that other people can assist with getting the application through and all the paperwork and all the uploads. But what we will then look for is those final signatures match whoever is that authorized signatory. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kristen, for clarifying. And yeah, as mentioned, going back to that documentation of the authorized signatory, this is actually an example of, kind of showing that paper trail that Kristen was talking about who is authorized to sign off on agreements, invoices, or contracts on behalf of the organization. And so this is an example of an existing documentation that schools might already have. And so we encourage you to check in with your school district, or if you want, we could also be in contact with them. But this is what a school district that we worked with submitted. So as you see here, I don't know if you could see it clearly, but it has language that basically says the following people have the authority to sign the documents in these various categories. And as you see here, all the different position titles, they all technically could be a primary signatory, but we just need to work with one of them because they're already listed in this resolution. So for this case, I think we worked with the Director of Business Services, and they were the primary signatory for this refill station application. They just signed off on the agreement. That's who the person where the invoices were sent out to and signed off by. But yeah, again, this is just an example of what's already existing within an organization. But if you don't have any type of documentation for this requirement, we recommend you to either have a resolution signed by your governing entity or look through, by your bylaws or your charter or anything like that that might have information on this. We also have recommended template language if you need it. And again, you'll find this helpful resources right on our website available to download as well. All right. Next slide, please. All right, and then I'll go ahead and pass it off to Kristen to close us off.
All right, thanks, Robert. So now that we've shared probably information overload, that's everything that we had planned today. So we just wanted to close it out with just some next steps and some resources. So we really encourage you to visit our grants portal. There are links all over our grants website to get to that Flux grants management system where the first thing you can do is register and create your Flux account. And then you can start taking a look at the different applications that we have. And then other resources as you're going through those applications are all on our website. We have frequently asked questions for both different grant opportunities. We have those award timeline and process graphics on our website. We have all the project and applicant eligibility and requirements listed on our website. We have a Flux demonstration video, so you can watch that if you are not sure how to register for Flux. We will also be posting today's workshop. I think we even have some past workshops and other past presentation PowerPoints up there as well. But our team is here to help you navigate our process. We know we're a cumbersome government agency, but these grant opportunities are the most streamlined processes that we offer. And we really do want to get our funding out to the community as quickly and efficiently as we can to get these projects going and all these great ideas and bringing them to life. So that leads us on to our next slide, which has our grants team's contact information. So we are, like I said, here to support you throughout the process from application to award to execution and close out. So please, you can contact us all at any of these ways. So we have our grants hotline here. You can get any one of us, our grants email address. We ensure that there's a timely response, and that all of our inquiries are tracked. And then we have on our website, a Calendly scheduling link. So if you go to either the mini grants page or the refill station page and just want to schedule a meeting with us, you can do it directly from the website. It's connected to our calendars. So we're happy to, be as accessible as we can to support you through this. Okay, we got so many great questions, but we can officially open it up for questions right now too as well. If there are any remaining questions. All right, and thank you, Renee, for all the chat.
No questions at the moment.
Okay, no questions. Great.
Oh, wait, no, just a thank you for all the information.
Great, yeah, thank you everyone for attending. Hi, Perla.
And just a heads up, I put in our chat a post-workshop survey. So if you have a moment, it'd be super helpful to get your feedback. And we did get a question regarding the Flux portal. So we have a attendee in the Flux portal and wants to know what is the EIN profile and what they should list for a public school.
Yeah, that's a great question. For public school. You probably don't have one. It's usually for nonprofit organizations. So that EIN number helps to link them, I think, to like other systems. So our Flex system is linked to that. So if they have a profile somewhere else, it could help them auto-populate the information into our Flex system. But for schools, you probably don't have that. So you can just skip it.
Another question regarding Flux. Do they put the school name as the legal name or the individual's name?
So if you're doing the organization name, excuse me, then it would be your school's legal name.
No other questions.
All right. Well, we really appreciate everyone coming out today. I know it was a long session, but hopefully it was really helpful. This is our first time doing the joint workshop with mini grant information and the refill station information. So we really appreciate if you could just provide us any feedback to help us continue to improve, or even let us know what went well for you in our post-workshop survey. It looks like Renee already got that in the chat. Thank you. But we really do value the feedback that we receive and act upon it for our future outreach. So thank you in advance.